There, Green Bay, Wisconsin, for the first time since he clinched the Republican nomination, Donald Trump out on the campaign trail. He will speak in Wisconsin in moments. But just a few hours ago, Michigan, Grand Rapids, some 1,200 miles away from the southern border. But it was immigration at the heart of Trump's stump speech. The former president focusing on a 25-year-old woman who had been killed by a migrant.
I will deliver justice for Laken. I said that, and now, today, I'm adding something. It's going to be for Laken, and it's also justice for Ruby. We're going to deliver justice for Ruby. We're going to watch what happens with this thug.
Now, as Trump takes to the Midwest, President Biden's campaign is now focusing on a much different message and seemingly a new state, Florida. We will take you inside the thinking of both campaigns. Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, here we are. Here we go. Joining us today, Ashley Davis, former George W. Bush White House official. Brad Howard is a Democratic strategist. Roma Daravi, former Trump White House Deputy Director of Strategic Communications. Michael Starr Hopkins is a Democratic strategist. And Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former Chief of Staff in the Trump White House. Joining us, where are you, Mick? Charlotte, North Carolina, it looks like. Hello, Mick. Hello to you all. Happy Tuesday. Nice to have you all in.
Oh, yeah.
Good to see you again. Haven't seen you in a few weeks. Haven't seen you all in a couple weeks.
Very busy.
Trump back out on the trail today, and it was the issue. You know, he was in the state of Michigan, right? Border state with Canada, not the southern border, some 1,200 miles away. But this was the message from Donald Trump in part earlier today in Michigan. Watch.
We have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. They're having fistfights with our police officers right in the middle of streets. They're sending prisoners, murderers, drug dealers, mental patients, and terrorists, the worst they have in every country.
All right, so what about this, Ashley? Obviously, immigration, huge issue. Crime, a huge issue. But Trump calling this migrant crime and trying to make this one issue. What if it becomes one issue?
Well, I think it's become one issue a couple weeks ago, especially.
You think so?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's a marketing genius, and I think it's the best thing that he's done. I mean, immigration is going to be the number one or two issue in this election, and for him tying it to the border is really bring across a lot of voters.
Immigrants are not criminals. Immigrants are not criminals. And when he continues to label immigrants as criminals, yeah, it may poll well for Republicans, but it's terrible.
Is he
for the country.
Doing that, or is he pulling out specific instances and highlighting them?
He's using instances to paint a broad brush, and that's exactly what we've seen autocratic and fascist dictators do. Use examples of something to paint as a broad brush. I mean, look, if you look at people who are born outside of this country, they commit crimes at a lower rate than Native Americans.
But what's happening right now on the border, though, is illegal immigrants, and that's what's happening. And the illegal immigrants that are committing crimes is an issue. I mean, we need to we have a rule of law that we need to enforce, and we love each other, but
Roma and Mulvaney, come on in. I want to get your thoughts here too, but Roma, go for it.
Absolutely. I mean, he's not just talking about immigrants. He's very specifically saying illegal immigrants.
Is he specifically saying that?
He is saying it specifically because we have had over 1 million gotaways, and we've had over 300 terrorists that we know about come into the country since Biden took office. How many do we not know about? You know, and I will just say, Blake, you mentioned that Trump is calling Michigan a border state. It's not just Trump. It's all of the police officers that were standing behind him at that podium today that told the American people that the border is the reason they're seeing so much lawlessness and crime in their community.
Okay, Mick, so today is obviously primary day in Wisconsin, Grand Rapids, Michigan on the way, basically general direction. He was talking about the case of Ruby Garcia, 25-year-old who was killed last month in Grand Rapids. Authorities reportedly said the alleged killer was in the U.S. illegally and had been deported to Mexico in 2020. So he goes to Michigan today, talks about this case, and what about it? If all of a sudden, Mick, and what is the thinking, you think, from Donald Trump if he makes immigration and crime the same issue?
A couple things. Blake, it's good to see you back at work. Welcome back. We also, I think my good friend Michael Star Hopkins set a record. It was only 35 seconds till we had fascist dictator out of the Democrats about Donald Trump. I think that's a new record for this show. But look, listen, whether or not Michael and I or the Republicans and Democrats agree this is good for the country, the question is, what do the voters want to talk about? And right now, the voters want to talk about the border, whether or not you're painting with a broad brush. And by the way, anytime you paint with a broad brush, you're going to get outside the lines. That is a fact of life. But right now, the voters care about what illegal immigration is doing in their communities. Keep in mind, this is in Michigan. This is a blue state. This is a blue city. And they're talking about immigration. They're talking about it in San Francisco and New York and Chicago. This is going to be, like Ashley said, number one or number two, along with the economy, in the election. If Joe Biden is not talking about it, he does it at his own peril.
Okay, by the way, live look right now, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Donald Trump up on stage again. This is the first time. Hear the music. Is that some dancing from the former president?
Yeah.
I think it is.
That music.
If you've never been to a Trump rally, that is the song that leads into it. Donald Trump there in Wisconsin. We'll monitor for news if there is any. Meantime, we know Michigan and Wisconsin, two states that Trump flipped in 2016 but lost in 2020, they're going to be in play in November. But how about this one? Florida. Trump won his home state the last two times and had largely been viewed as a big stretch for President Biden. But now the Biden campaign says it sees an opening in the Sunshine State now that the state Supreme Court has cleared the way for abortion to be on the ballot there in November. Brad, you know that state well. You worked there and polled there and et cetera. Waste of time, waste of money, in your view, or is it worth it for the Biden campaign to say, you know what, we got to invest a little?
It depends on what type of investments we're talking about. If it's a true commitment to be there for the long term and to work with the state party to really develop a organization that can register and turn out votes for the long term, then absolutely that investment is needed in Florida. It is political malpractice to write off a state that large with that many electoral votes. But secondly, like, the abortion issue is going to be critically helpful for the president there, because what I do think is, as we all know, President Trump's base is lock solid with him. They're going to turn out no matter what. Right now, the President Biden's base is, split a little bit, particularly with the issue of Israel. But abortion will unite and get rid of the enthusiasm gap. It now comes down to swing voters in the I-4 corridor, and that's where the real battle will be. Here
are the numbers right now. The polling averages Trump at basically 50%, President Biden behind him, I don't know, some 12, 13 points. You used to work for Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy. Yep. Show the tweet if we can real quick, because she basically said, you know what? The Democrats messed up by not having a primary in the state of Florida and now trying to compete in Florida. Is she right there about your party?
Absolutely. I completely agree with my former boss here. And I think the biggest concern with canceling this primary was that when you've turned out and voted in a primary in Florida, when you turn out and vote, you're automatically sent votes by mail, like mail ballots on the next, I think, 2 or 3 elections. And so by not turning out your base in the primary, they're not being automatically mailed a vote by mail ballot in November. So now they have to go out and do a whole other effort to get Democrats to request a ballot and then get them to get the ballot and then fill out the ballot and then send it in.
Got it. Going to Congresswoman Lois Frankel here in a second. But first, before we do, Mulvaney, real quick, you think it's a waste of time for Democrats to go down this road or no?
Yeah, probably. Look, everybody knows, everybody will agree on this panel that the most important asset that a candidate has is time, whether you're a president or you want to be the president or you're running for any particular office. Back in 2020, I remember in the summertime, Democrats said, oh, my goodness, we think Texas might be in play. And I remember writing a piece that said, I'll believe that when I see Joe Biden go to Texas. And Joe Biden never went to Texas. If Joe Biden starts going to Florida, I'll believe one of these press releases. If they actually start buying tens of millions of dollars of television, I might believe it. But until then, I think it's just a shot across the bow.
All right, come on in, Congresswoman Lois Frankel. As I mentioned, Democratic Congresswoman from the state of Florida. Nice to talk to you again, Congresswoman. Thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. Appreciate it. Is Joe Biden going to win your home state?
We're going to give it a try. I'll tell you what, Donald Trump has set up a situation here where you're going to see Democrats, actually all pro-choice people, are going to flood the polls in November because the Florida Supreme Court just put into effect one of the most devastating restricted abortion bans in the country. It's going to affect thousands and thousands of Floridians, and we are fired up.
You just heard Mick. You just heard Brad on your side of the aisles. Mick's point was if the candidate, and he's a former chief of staff, he would know that if the president goes there, then they're serious. So is it just lip service from the Biden campaign until he actually shows up, until they actually start putting money forward and time and resources?
Well, I'll tell you what, whether Biden is here once, twice, 100 times, I can tell you what, the women of the state are going to be here because we're going to get out and vote, and our votes will be for Biden. We know that Donald Trump put in place a Supreme Court that has really given this devastating blow to us by the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And so we're going to be fighting back for our rights. And I believe that the Biden team is serious now, and they're going to be taking a look and see what's happening as we go along.
Okay. Congresswoman, you are, as you know, I don't need to tell you, but for the audience, one of the few dozen or so Jewish members in Congress right now. We've, of course, seen the news over the last 24 hours or so of those humanitarian workers from the Jose Andres' World Central Kitchen who were killed inadvertently by the IDF. I wonder what you think the response should be from the commander-in-chief, President Biden.
Well, the one thing about our commander-in-chief is we know he has a lot of empathy. And war is terrible. And there are always mistakes made in war. There are tragedies made in war. And I think his response has to be empathy and sympathy for those who lost their lives. And to keep pushing for the release of the hostages, the defeat of Hamas, and for humanitarian support for those who need it.
Congresswoman Lois Frankel from Florida. Nice to talk to you as always. We'll have you on back soon. Thank you, Congresswoman Lois Frankel.
Okay, good to be with you.
Yeah, talk soon. Okay. I wonder what you heard there from the
great artwork.
I was going to say fantastic artwork. I wanted to ask her what that was behind her, but it is great. I wonder what you heard there.
I think when we talk about investing in Florida, we also need to think about down ticket because that's where this is really going to help out. When you look at the infrastructure for Republicans, they're trying to pay for Donald Trump's legal fees, and that's going to run a lot of money out of the account. Democrats are going to be able to spread that money out, and when you start doing this, hybrid 50-state strategy, Republicans aren't going to be able to compete financially. And so when you start to get to down ticket races, the state houses, the state senate, the congressional races, that's going to be really where you're going to see the effects of it because there's not going to be enough get out the vote for registration drives to do all the things that will be the difference when you're talking about states being won between 10,000, 15,000 votes or congressional districts being won by 500 to 1,000 votes.
Sorry, go.
No, I just think this is like as you're going to play in Florida in regards to the presidential, but I do think that abortion is the issue for Democrats that immigration is for Republicans. They're both really good issues on each side.
Right.
However, I think today that when Trump came out and said he's going to make his announcement on what he feels the abortion weeks or whatever his policy is going to come out with in the next week, I think that he's trying to put a stop under this conversation in Florida. Right. I mean, there's no reason that he didn't come out. If I could make
one closing point here. Yep. There's a new chairwoman at the party, the Florida Democratic Party, in Nikki Fried. She's the former ag commissioner, the only Democrat to win a state office statewide in like the last 30 years. She has a lot of street cred here. And I hope the Biden administration in their Biden campaign doesn't do kind of a top-down, here's what you need to do, but actually listens to her and listens to the rank and file, all the down-ballot folks, because they are fired up. They just don't know. We just need help.
Roma, last word.
I agree with both of the Democrat strategists. We should absolutely send all of Joe Biden's senators to Florida.
So Joe Biden potentially leaning into Florida. Can we show a live look once again? And just in case you're tuning in right now or listening to us on Sirius XM right now, Donald Trump in Green Bay, Wisconsin. You can hear him there. First time he's been back out on the trail since officially clinching the Republican nomination in Michigan earlier today and in Wisconsin right now. All right, coming up here on the Hill, it is likely to be a focal point of the election. Electric vehicles.
We have hundreds of thousands of cars electric. They can't sell them. People don't want them. And you got to go with the market. So we're going to end that immediately. We're going to end it day one.
Trump talking about the EV mandate. Did you happen to see What went on with Tesla today, by the way? Of course, the iconic EV maker, the biggest one in this country, one of the great companies in the United States. Did it just flash a warning sign on the future of EV sales? We'll get into it. Plus, the LSU-Iowa women's college basketball game lived up to the hype. But did you see what happened before the game started? Why the governor of that state is now criticizing his home state team. And Mulvaney, what are we going to talk about, Hot Mike with Mick? Anything on your mind today?
Oh, we got a couple things to come over.
An airport for Donald Trump, is that in the cards?
No, but we could talk about it.
Some of Hot Mike with Mick when the Hill here on NewsNation returns. Stay with us.
Are we doing the national anthem?
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Did you watch the big women's college basketball game last night? In a rematch of last year's national championship game, the University of Iowa defeated LSU to advance to the Final Four. But now the attention has turned to what happened just before the game started. LSU is being criticized for skipping the pregame national anthem. You can see some of the video there. The Iowa team, they were arm in arm. But when the camera pans over to LSU, nowhere to be seen on the court. The head coach, Kim Mulkey, claims it was not intentionally done. But in a response, the governor of that state, Jeff Landry, is proposing a new policy that would have, quote, student athletes be present for the national anthem or risk their athletic scholarship. He goes on to say, he's a fan of women's basketball, has long tradition in his family, but he says it is a matter of respect. You two are already shaking your heads.
Go kick rocks, man. This whole idea that the national anthem should even be part of sports is a weird thing. Like when we look at other countries and you see them play the national anthem, we're like, oh, look at how jingoistic there is. But like, what does the national anthem have to do with the LSU basketball game? Like,
it's
they're actually
country.
They haven't been playing.
Should it be out of schools then?
They haven't been coming out to the national anthem rather all season. Like, this is an issue.
I find that hard to believe. I would love to see that. I don't know the answer to that question, but I would love to see that because I'm surprised nobody has called them out on it earlier because it's disrespectful to our country.
Kim Mulkey is like the
every
most
other country I go to. I'm sorry. Every other country I go to for a sports game, they play their national anthem.
I disagree. I think the national anthem is fine being played. It's a different situation if you're forcing them to do it, which true patriotism, they should just be showing them in general. But they're at the mercy of their coach. The coach directing them what to do. And if she hadn't been in the news recently, I don't know that this would have been such a big story.
So the reporter who covers LSU, right, who knows his team inside and out better than anyone, says LSU is never on the court for the national anthem. Kim Mulkey, the head coach, explained it basically saying, look, at 12 minutes, give or take, when there's 12 minutes left before the game starts, the team goes in, they do their thing in the locker room, and then they come back out, and so they missed the anthem. But I'm surprised to hear you say we shouldn't have it. Should we have it at sporting events?
What is the point of it?
The point is that this is the United States of America, and we already have a history of segregation like the governor said. And so this is a time where you come together before a game, before you fight each other to show that the reason is because it is a game, you are competing against each other, you're fighting each other, and the national anthem shows that we are all in this together.
All right, so those student athletes, they are on scholarship, by the way. And would you look at this headline from the Associated Press today? Check it out. College will cost up to $95,000 this fall. Schools say it's okay. President Biden, as you might know, has made canceling student debt a key staple of his administration, and now 11 Republican attorneys general are suing, arguing that the administration's new repayment plan, which can eventually lead to debt forgiveness, they say is illegal. Quote, the timing of these actions also makes plain their pretextual nature. The first round of debt relief was rushed out in time for the 2022 elections in a transparent bread and circuses attempt to boost base turnout. This second round of debt cancellation, they say, manages to take effect shortly before the 2024 election. All right, Mulvaney, Harvard and Georgetown educated, I believe. So you spent $1 trillion on your college and postgrad. What about which one do you want to take? Where you want to go?
Where would you like to start on this one? Goodness gracious. Let's start at the very beginning, which goes back to 2010. The whole reason the federal government is involved in this is because they nationalized student loans in order to pay for the Affordable Care Act. That's not made up, by the way. They needed money to help balance the way the CBO scored health care, so they took responsibility for all student loans. So now you've got a situation where the government is giving the loans instead of private banks. The government give the loan to anybody. They don't care because they don't expect to get paid back. And what did the schools do? They raised their tuitions across the board and went to people and said, don't worry about it. You can just borrow the money. And now we've come full cycle to where the government said, okay, you borrowed this money, which we encourage you to take to go to a more expensive school because they raised the tuition, and now you don't have to pay it back. It's one of the greatest wealth transfers in my adult lifetime. These higher education schools have absolutely printed money at the taxpayers' expense for the last 10 years. Is the bread and circuses thing right? Yeah. And we can have a debate about personal responsibility, but the bottom line, this is what you get when you get government control of an industry.
Kenyon College in Ohio, 69 grand, give or take. Franklin and Marshall, 68 grand in-state tuition. Just down the road from us here, University of Virginia, about $20,000.
Yeah, I mean,
no. That's in-state, by the way.
That's in-state. Yeah. So that for UVA, that's in-state, right? And then when you go out of state, as you're right, I mean, it's probably like 2 to 3.
My son went to University of Virginia out of state, and I can assure you it's a lot more than $20,000.
Let me say two things to that. I think the federalizing of student loans definitely had some negatives to it, but it allowed access to people to get loans who wouldn't have ordinarily been able to get access to those loans. I also think on top of that, we really got to be careful because I think it's the schools that really we should be looking at. The price fixing around tuition. I went to law school. Those textbooks were $500 per class. There's no reason those textbooks should cost
real quick, should we be canceling student debt?
I think we should be looking at how we allocate student debt. I think there should be some forgiveness.
Okay, should you cancel it?
I think, but I'm a protege of the Bush, which Bush signed into law, the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program. I had $60,000 forgiven because I committed 10 years to public service. Right. I think if we could tie some element of that to it, would be better.
I don't know. I mean, I think there definitely has to be a reason if it's going to happen, but I don't believe it should happen at all. You know, you made the choice to go to college, to spend that money that you don't have. You should have to work to get it back. And you know what? There's actually a trend right now that the next generation is going into trade schools. Yeah. So I don't know that this is really going to be an argument that the Democrats can get anything out of for much longer.
And I think students and families are starting to wake up to this and say, well, wait a minute. Where can I go to school at the cheapest price tag? Because at the end of the day, I don't want to come out with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of debt. All right, coming up, still much more ahead here on The Hill. Is politics being prioritized over public health? Ever heard that question before? This time, though, it has to deal with menthol cigarettes. So why did the Biden administration miss yet another self-imposed deadline on a key decision? And did Tesla just flash a warning sign? What drivers might be signaling about the government's push to go green. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation. We're back in a few. Stay with us.
They can't sell them. People don't want them. And you got to go with the market. We've sold about 5% of our cars are electric, and that's fine. So we're going to end that immediately. We're going to end it day one.
That, of course, former President Trump in the auto capital of Michigan earlier today, bashing electric vehicles and what he plans to do with the industry if reelected. Now, his comments are coming on what appears to be a bad day for Tesla. The automaker announcing it delivered roughly 386,000 new cars in the first 3 months of the year. But that is down more than 8% from the same period last year. Now, there seems to be a trend here in recent weeks. For example, Fisker announced a production pause. Hertz's CEO stepped down after that company's foray into EVs. It also comes just days after the Biden administration issued a rule with one of the goals being to increase the number of EV trucks by 2040. All right, we got some warning signs here, blips on the screen. You were shaking your head. What's going on?
Yeah, the EV trucks is ridiculous. They also mentioned self-driving semi-trucks, which is terrifying. But this issue, it should be common sense. This is America, the land of the free, and we like a free market. There's no reason that there should be a government mandate on this if it's something that the American people want, which we know now it's not something that they're ready for.
So Trump basically said today he's good with a market share of 5%, give or take. But, you know, with EVs,
the market should drive it. It can't be government mandated. I totally agree. But I do have to say on the semi-trucks, I mean, Tesla has been working on that for years, and so there is going to be that, but it shouldn't be mandated.
But the big
mandate is the real problem.
I agree with the mandate. It's a little tricky, but the problem is with the electric vehicle industry and concept is you've got to have a consumer demand for it. You've got to have the infrastructure for it. Before owning an EV is actually practical.
That's why I asked if there's a warning sign. Is this about EVs? Is this about Tesla? Show the Ross Gerber tweet, who's a bull on Tesla, someone who's been an investor from the beginning. He says, quote, basically Tesla can't sell its cars due to Elon's behavior. Yeah. Let's stop blaming the Houthi rebels or German environmental terrorists or a recession that never came or interest rates. Only one person responsible for this. I hear the Democrats wanting to blame Elon.
Well, here's the big problem here. We have to get ahead of the technology, because if we don't, it's going to be China that will own the EV share of the marketplace.
They already do. They make all of it.
But the reason that the United States needs to get ahead of that.
So then is Trump right that we should tariff them?
No. Well, when you start to tariff other countries, you create trade wars. But what we can do is make sure that we're building the technology here, making sure we're doing government contracts here that we can.
And this was the focus of the CHIPS Act.
Yeah. Mulvaney, I teed you up with a lot there.
Yeah, I'll stick on one topic. I think maybe my Democrat fans are figuring out you can make people buy light bulbs that they probably don't want. You might even be able to make them buy toilets and washing machines they don't want. But people draw a line at their automobiles. And there's going to be pushback against this if the Democrats continue to push the EV mandates down the throats of the American consumer.
All right. Well, the Biden administration's electric truck mandate could come at a price. This is what the Wall Street Journal is saying. Quote, the EPA's latest EV mandate is the most costly and fanciful to date. They say replacing diesel trucks with electric will cost the industry tens of billions of dollars each year. Truckers will pass on these costs to consumers. This, they say, is President Biden's trickle-down economics. Joining us now, founder, CEO of FreightWaves, Craig Fuller. FreightWaves is a data reporting agency focusing on the global freight market. Craig, good to talk to you. Once again, welcome back to the Hill. By the way, I should say the Democrats are already shaking their head at the Wall Street Journal op-ed. I'll get to them once we stop talking to you. But is the Wall Street Journal there right in your view?
Yeah, and they understated the problem. I mean, the problem is actually significant, and it will actually be a significant tax on consumers. You know, we all enjoy delivery to our houses, and we order products. We know what that was like when we couldn't get the supply chain to work the way we were used to it during COVID. This potentially could have the same impact simply because it's going to reduce the availability of capacity. What happens with the EVs is the technology and the infrastructure are not market ready. And the way that the mention of Tesla Semi, I mean, Elon Musk talked about having 200,000 of these semis when he first announced it by the end of 2022, and he's delivered less than 100. And this is one of the most successful EV manufacturers in the world.
Did they flash a warning sign today, in your view?
You know, I think the Tesla story as it relates to auto is quite different than the Tesla trucking story. The tech media loves to, and the venture capitalists love to talk about how Tesla is going to disrupt the trucking industry. It's just not going to happen. No one in the industry is really buying into the hype of the Tesla Semi. And the reality is the electric vehicles are not prime market ready for the heavy duty trucking business, regardless of what the administration wants to suggest.
You know, obviously, electric vehicles and the future, there's a long runway here. I think, Craig, about, the Wright brothers. 63 years later, I believe, we were on the moon. Not a lot of time. In the mid-'90s, we were asking the question, what's the internet? And there was the bubble in 2000, and there was, this internet's a fake thing. Anybody who thought the internet was a fake thing was dead wrong, flat wrong. And I just give you those two examples to ask, you know what, in, 20 years, 50 years, somewhere in there, are we going to sit back and say the Craig Fullers of the world, who were bearish on this, maybe they didn't have a long enough horizon?
Well, it's quite possible. We're talking about a pretty short horizon on a very important piece of our economy. I mean, trucking runs the U.S. goods economy. It is responsible for 70% of all freight moved in the United States. And if you all of a sudden require electric vehicles, which don't have the physical capabilities in terms of range to actually complete the mission, you're going to create a massive shortage of available capacity in the market. Okay. The problem with a lot of people can look at their automobiles, the consumer automobiles, and compare and say, well, they work, Tesla's successful, the F-150's out there. But remember, the mission of someone buying an automobile is quite different than what a heavy-duty trucking business wants to do. They're hauling 30 to 40,000 pounds of cargo on those trucks. The whole point is to fill that truck up as much as possible. And when you do that, it means that it mitigates the range you can take with electric vehicles. It's just not practical.
Right. Craig Fuller, good to talk to you. I'm sure we'll come back this election year on the issue. Craig, talk to you soon. All right, Brad, I promised you.
Well, look, the biggest problem I have with the Wall Street Journal editorial is they discount the public health benefits we would get from moving to electric vehicles, which is lower emissions, cleaner air. It would dramatically reduce the price we pay to move goods because you don't have to rely on foreign oil and foreign gas. But my bigger point with Democrats is this is my point is usually about how we communicate things. This is the better policy to move in this direction, but we can't do it by telling the Southerner you're wrong and immoral because you drive a truck.
I drive an F-150 though, and
we need to talk about it in a way that
for my F-150, but we can talk about how we progress this technology so that we're not relying on OPEC for gas prices.
By the way,
I've got a whole other thing.
I just surprised her.
Show the headline out of Los Angeles today real quick. This comes from KTLA. Disneyland's Autopia cars will switch from gas to electric. So even Disneyland, Steve,
of course they are.
Ron
DeSantis is going to be so upset about this. I think this would have naturally gone that way, but to mandate it.
I want to show you the image real quick out of Big Sur, which is in California. What happened there when you talk about infrastructure and all that? There was the waves that were coming over it ended up crashing and collapsing part of the roadway there. So when you talk about EVs, trucks, cars, whatever the future might be, still a reminder, and a beautiful reminder, look at that, of some of the infrastructure issues we still have no matter what the future holds. All right, coming up. The total solar eclipse is Monday. Guess who wants to see it? Prisoners in New York. And they are now taking legal action to watch that event. What in the world? Plus, Mick Mulvaney. Hot mic with Mick. Are we naming an airport after Donald Trump?
No, that's the second time you've asked me that question.
Hakeem Jeffries, is he going to lose his speakership? Don't answer that just yet. Hot mic with Mick on the other side of the break. We're back here on the Hill. Mick and the crew, stay with us.
All right.
Which are popular among younger people and black smokers. Now, anti-smoking groups are suing the federal government over yet another delay. Michael, you've done a lot of work on this issue.
Yeah.
This reeks of putting politics over public health, does it not?
In this one, politics is public health because on one hand, you want to make sure that African Americans who are being marketed menthol cigarettes aren't smoking menthol because it's horrifically unhealthy. But at the same time, when you ban menthol cigarettes, you've now created a black market, which creates, the likelihood that African Americans and law enforcement are going to have interaction, which is a criminal justice issue. So it's complicated and. I'm getting
the Trump administration, by the way, dealt with the same thing on menthol, and they punted. Biden right now is punting, and the politics behind it is.
No, listen, I actually think that this FDA is horrible on this issue, but also vaping. I mean, you're saying the same thing about menthol cigarettes that many people say about vaping on the Republican side, that it's an alternative to smoking, and if you take it out of which is what the FDA, the head of the tobacco. Whatever it's called at FDA. I'm sorry, I remember. I mean, they're saying he's trying to take vaping off the market, but he's not taking menthol off the market. And what's the difference?
The political issue here is afraid of losing black voters in states, especially in North Carolina and in Georgia.
States, even in Florida.
It's all about how you craft these arguments. I was working for the mayor of New Orleans when we got rid of smoking in bars in New Orleans, and you can imagine the pushback we got from that. But it was because the musicians in all the bars who were mostly black were getting the health consequences of cigarette smoking. So it was about educating and making it a health issue tailored to the black community.
It's about educating, says the comms professional. There you go.
Not educating, informing and bringing together behind the mission.
All right, time now for Hot Mic with Mick. Hello, Mick.
Let's do this, Berman.
Let's do it. All right. Been almost a month since Nikki Haley has dropped out of the presidential race. But as the New York Times points out, Trump has yet to reach out to her voters. Well, now President Biden is making a play for them. His campaign, Rome is saying that's not true, by the way.
True.
Get to Mick. His campaign releasing an ad over the weekend showing that Trump says he didn't essentially need Haley voters. All right, what's going on here, Mick?
I think it's a misnomer to call them Haley voters. Look, she ran a great campaign, finished second. We get all of that. But really, at the end, she became a placeholder for the anti-Trump vote. Some of those people are never coming back to Trump because they were never Trump voters in the first place. Remember, Nikki Haley won in a couple of states that had open primaries. So some of her voters were Democrats who are never coming back to Trump. Trump is not going to reach out to the other folks, the Republicans who might come back and say, oh, your Nikki Haley voters come back. He's going to do what he's always done and hope they come back. I'm just reading or watching the speech he's giving right now tonight. He just did a great line, which is, Easter Day was Transgender Visibility Day. November 5th is going to be Christian Visibility Day. That's a really good line for wayward Republicans who are now wondering, do I vote for Trump again or do I go and vote for Biden? So I think Trump is going to do it, but he's going to do it in his own way.
Okay, Donald Trump live in Wisconsin right now. By the way, you were a Nikki Haley supporter. You were in her world. What are you hearing? Well,
no, I think that Mick's right, though, that when there are the independents and Democrats that did vote for her, I don't think there are as many as that people think they were. But I think that Trump's policies probably will win out a lot of the Nikki voters that were.
Yeah, because Nikki Haley's were really Nikki's policies, were really Trump's policies. So when you look at the big difference, there really isn't one. And the thing that really bugs me about that headline alone is that it really is a blatant lie. If you get any of Trump's emails from the campaign or the PAC, or just follow him on X or Truth, you would have seen a video he put out right away when Nikki dropped out saying, come to our camp, we welcome you.
All right, turning now to the House, where Speaker Mike Johnson says that if Marjorie Taylor Greene goes through with her threat to oust him, there is a, quote, risk that we end up with Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, Democratic Speaker. Mick, do you think that's a real possibility or no? What are you hearing?
Yeah, in an ordinary world, you say there's no chance of this happening. Of course, we long ago left the ordinary world in Washington, D.C. And the way I look at it is this, is when a plane crashes, they usually describe it as saying 15 different things have to go wrong at the same time. For Jeffries to become the Speaker of the House would be a plane crash in the Republican Party. That being said, 10 of those 15 things have pretty much already gone wrong already. So is there a chance? Yeah, I think there probably is. I think the Republicans' biggest advantage right here is the clock. There's only 8 months left until the election. They might be able to hold it together that long.
So you're saying
real quick to the Democrats.
Well, no, I just want to say one thing. I know we're jaded, Mick, but how many times did we hear when McCarthy was going to lose that Jeffries?
Listen, whether it's now or whether it's November, we will see a Speaker's Jeffries.
I'll add it's
you think so?
We absolutely. We're going to take back the House.
I wouldn't rule it out because there is. For the first time, I think in a while, we can see how he could become Speaker, either because of a death or a resignation, which Republicans are resigning and handing it over to him, or secondly, that there's a consensus candidate that emerges in some kind of coalition government. I think that's a tiny sliver, but it's real.
All right, and then, gentlemen, we'll have Biden winning Florida, and we'll have Speaker Jeffries.
There you go. All right, then there's this, by the way, quote, House Republicans want to rename Dulles after Trump. That's right. A group of Republicans want you to hear, welcome to Trump International Airport. When you come to the Dulles Airport, that's basically outside of Metro D.C. in the Virginia area. Mick, is this real?
Yeah, and keep in mind there's more than a couple members of Congress in both parties who think Dulles is really Dallas. So that's the level of sophistication we're working with some of these folks. But no, this will happen when this happens. Republicans will get to name Dulles Airport after Donald Trump as soon as Democrats get to rename O'Hare for Obama. This is never ever going to happen. The days of having bipartisan support, which is what's necessary to do this, are long and they're a long way off again. And I do not see this happening anytime soon.
Hot mic with Mick. Mick, thank you.
By the way, my wife, I could hear my wife yelling at me from upstairs when I just said that. So
we can't hear her, but hello, Mrs. Mulvaney. Thanks for giving us Mick for the hour. We appreciate it. By the way, we are just days away from the total solar eclipse on April 8th. You'll be able to see it basically in many spots across the country. But there is one group that is going to court to watch it. Check out this headline from The Hill. New York inmates are suing to watch the solar eclipse after state orders prisons locked down. They are arguing the solar eclipse is a religious event, and the next time it will occur is 2044. Should they get to watch it?
I just think that the ironic part is you're being allowed outside and it'd be dark. That's kind of punishing. Yeah.
Would you say it's a total eclipse of the heart?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
It's a slippery slope, though. Then maybe the sun, daylight is a religious experience.
I would like to know how many before this happened really cared about it.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Mulvaney, we'll say goodbye to you from here. Catch you soon. Thank you, Mick. Appreciate it. On the other side of the break, as voters head to the polls in Wisconsin today, someone who is not on the ballot happens to be front and center for voters there. That man right there, Mark Zuckerberg. You might be wondering, what does Mark Zuckerberg have to do with an election in Wisconsin? Leland Vittert joins us on the other side of the break. You're watching The Hill here on News Nation. Thank you to the panel as well. We're back.
Special guest Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
You're wrong, as usual, but it's your show.
TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
But I really enjoy these conversations, and I look forward to the next one.
Tomorrow at 8, 7 Central, only on News Nation.
Welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. So voters in Wisconsin today may send a message to Mark Zuckerberg, of all people. Donors like him as well. Thanks, but no thanks, potentially. We'll see how the vote goes. On the ballot, this is the story, is a measure promoted by state Republicans banning outside private donations to help conduct elections. Now, it comes after a controversy stemming from Zuckerberg and his wife, who donated some $420 million in 2020 to two nonprofit organizations. Now, those groups gave money to state and local election officials for education and to improve voting infrastructure. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. Hello.
Hey. I love that they call these nonpartisan organizations. Mark Zuckerberg is just an altruistic guy hoping that you just want to get out the vote. Come on.
It was $10 million, I think, that was specifically designated to Wisconsin. And now Republican lawmakers there are a little skeptical, shall we say?
Well, and perhaps with good reason, as you know, as if a Republican billionaire was giving money. It normally has some strings attached or some ulterior motives. This goes back to the question of how much outside money, big money, getting poured into these races, elections, whatever it is, because to Mark Zuckerberg, $10 million is literally a rounding error. And in an election in Wisconsin, it can change everything.
You could also make the case maybe Facebook needs to look internally with what's going on there and on its platform. But that's a story for another day.